The detective will keep us company. We are in this story, we're identifying with the little girl. She's all goodness and light and pretty. So we're cute and goodness, but we get to go in the forest and hang out with the creature. That's the interesting part of the story. It wasn't interesting back at home with mommy. So what's going to happen? We're back in grandmother's house. The wolf gets sight of the little girl, leaps out of bed, again, one big gulp, and she's gone. Now, we have a very well-fed wolf, incredibly pleased with himself. He has pulled off a little strategy here, eaten twice in one day. Probably hasn't eaten for several days. It's the life of a wolf. Oh boy, you take a really big meal, get a little tired, like a holiday feast or something, and boy, it's nap time. And he looks back over at the bed. That old woman's not going to be using that bed. What the heck? Unused bed, tired wolf, he zonks out, snoring rather loudly, which might be why we have a tale about a single wolf, but no commentary on that. Anyway, the door is wide open, and the snoring, thundering snoring, goes out into the nearby wood. As it happens, conveniently, because these stories have all kinds of convenient things in them, but so does life, a huntsman comes by. A hunter with his rifle comes by. On older versions, it's a crossbow, but anyway, it's a rifle in this one. Notices the old woman's door is open. Hears this rather ominous snoring coming. My goodness, I can't imagine that old woman was snoring so loud. Why in the world has she left her door open? One thing we can tell from the context is that they know each other. The huntsman would know there's only a few cottages in the woods. He probably knows them all. I'd better look in on her, see if she's all right. So here he's on pastoral care. He's going to check in on the elderly, and he stops by and looks across the room and sees that wolf snoring away. Very gently, very quietly, he lifts his rifle. You old sinner, I have you in my sights at last. From that, we gather that he's been hunting this particular wolf. Notice the interconnectivity. Notice that not exactly family, but there's a network of energies going on, and I'm going to propose, taken like dream imagery, this is all parts of the dreamer. So I'm the little girl on the journey. I'm also the mother that was wise enough to initiate this action. I'm also the forest, definitely the wolf, and now I'm the effectiveness that can solve the problem. Why didn't the dreamer bring the huntsman into the story sooner? Because you need the integration. The bad thing needs to happen, but you don't want the story to end there. Then it's a mere tragedy instead of a transformative, initiatory, happy story. So the hunter is about to squeeze off around and take out that wolf forever when it crosses his mind that he does not see the old woman. Knowing a little about wolves, he thinks he might have gulped her down whole. It might have just happened. If I act quickly, let me see if I can open up the wolf. It could happen, possibly. He sees a pair of scissors. He starts opening up, snip, snip. He doesn't see the old woman. He sees some red velvet, which kind of confuses him. Red, but it's not blood, it's cloth. What? It's a little girl who he does not know. And she shakes herself off and says, oh, it was really scary and dark inside that wolf. And then he sees the old woman's foot, and he snips a little more and helps her out, and she is really shaken and weakened from it, and sits her down. And the little girl says, that was really mean of that wolf to gobble us up like that. I think we should teach him a lesson. I think we should put rocks in there where we are. Okay, so the little girl and the huntsman and Grandma helps a little. They get what rocks they can carry, and they fill up the wolf. And then they very carefully and quietly sew up the wolf. I want to point out, it's not mentioned in the story, that the wolf is sleeping through this. This is a very sound sleeper. No anesthetic that we know of. Okay, now they wake up the wolf. Wakes up with a start and sees one thing in the whole room there. He doesn't seem to notice the grandmother or the little girl. He notices the rifle. Holy moly, he makes a leap for it to try to escape his doom, but he's put on a little weight. He's put on a lot of weight. Those stones slam him to the floor and kill him on the spot. Okay, still I do feel for the wolf. There is a happier ending than you might expect in this tale, a little happier than the Chinese version, because the hunter asks the old woman, it's her house, he says, could I have the wolf? I'm a hunter. I want to skin it. I want the pelt. I've got something I want to make out of it. I'll bury the remains. I won't leave a mess. I added that, but the tidiness of, okay. So he drags that away and takes the pelt and goes. Now, I'm completely adding this, but I've done some anthropological research in Siberia about shamanic rituals, and they make these elaborate ceremonial robes. Up there, it's mostly caribou. But they're channeling, sometimes bear, they're channeling some animal spirit. So in my little addendum to this story, I'm going to say that huntsman has a side job. He's a part-time minister, well, not a minister, he's a part-time shaman on a contract. And he does not have the proper ceremonial robe, and he wanted to channel wolf energy. And this guy has the most beautiful fur, and he made this elaborate robe out of it with lots of bells and things for all the ceremonial jangling and all that. And that wolf is in the life of that area for a long time after, because that huntsman's son inherits the robe, and it goes on down. He lives forever, symbolically, in ritual form. Oh, the little girl, she's okay, so is the grandmother. The grandmother pops that bottle of wine and gets into those cakes and it feels a little bit better. Did you notice that there's a sacramental element there? She got mass out of this deal here. And the little girl says, in the future, I will not wander off the path if I'm going on a journey to the forest. But I said in advance, I don't buy it. I think that that's not really going to happen. At the end of Scary Things, we always pledge. The thing is, we need to have the adventures. We need the transgressive part of the story. We also need the integration and the happy ending. So there's a story. You can think about your own favorite fairy tales and what they teach you. You need to move into the metaphor, though. It's important to not simply see it, oh, this is a scary story, and the lesson is don't ever take any risks in your life again. That's in there for a very small child. Then you look back at the story later, you say, wait, there are a few more lessons here, and some of them contradict each other. So the personal applications of this particular sermon, notice what pondering this familiar tale stirs up on you. Did it remind you of other fairy tales? Did it remind you of certain scenes from past? Any old memories come up? This is a ritual activity that you have participated in before. I would encourage you to value those memories, those stories, whatever is stirred, as significant to your identity and your own soul's purpose. The image of picking flowers, major point in the story. What are your distractions? What good activities keep you from better activities? Things that seem like a good idea at the time, but there's something you really need to get to that never quite gets reached. Those flowers are sometimes called high-level displacement activity. This is, and we're good at coming up with things. They say, what do you get when you combine a writer and a deadline? A really clean house. We all have systems like that. Watch out for them. Even something as lovely as picking flowers, if it's not your soul's purpose, set it aside. And what is your inner huntsman? What is the effectiveness that your inner group brings in at just the right moment? How do you save your bacon? Not too late, not too soon. You see, if the huntsman arrives too soon, there's no integration. The scary thing needs to happen. We need to claim some wolfness out of this story, even though it's a scary process. And then, at the right time, bring in the solution. That means that just before he arrives, we have to forget he exists. We have to think, yes, out of my vulnerability, I need to solve all these problems. No. There is a more effective energy available that we can bring in when we want to. Try to think of what your effectiveness is that you can draw on when feeling weak. And the final point is from Anne Bach, who's a writing therapist, and she suggests consider writing a traumatic part of your story as a little activity, as homework, as if it is a fairy tale, where you have the scary thing, you have the trouble, and then you have a solution, a fairy tale type solution. Invent your own form. I will conclude with the third poem. This is by Sheena Pugh, is a British writer. It's called Sometimes, but I can't read it until I wipe my nose. First things first. Sometimes things don't go, after all, from bad to worse. Some years the grapevines face down frost. Green thrives. The crops don't fail. Sometimes we aim high and all goes well. A people sometimes will step back from war, elect an honest leader, decide they care enough that they can't leave some stranger poor. Some folks become what they were born for. Sometimes our best efforts do not go amiss. Sometimes we do as we meant to. The sun will sometimes melt a field of sorrow that seemed hard frozen. May it happen for you.